Okay, we're going to have a look at the 2016 cash budgeting question. 2016 and indeed 2013, they are hybrid questions where you have the elements of a cash budget and a production budget combined together into one question. It's important, therefore, that you don't tackle this question until you have covered and you are comfortable with a standard cash budget and a standard production budget question. The question is laid out in your question packs or on your exam papers as follows. It says Irwin Limited is planning to set up a business on the first day of July 2016 and has made the following forecast for the first 6 months of trading. It gives you the sales units and the sales revenue for 6 months, July through to the end of December. And then there are 6 paragraphs. The first 3 paragraphs are to do with part A and B, which are the production elements of the budgets. And I'm going to deal with that in this video. And then the latter 3 paragraphs are to do with cash budgeting and part C and D, which I'll do in the next video. So let's look at the setup of the page. In fact, first off, if we just look at what part A asks us to do, it says prepare a production budget for the first 4 months, or for the 4 months from July to October 2016. Even though we're given the information for 6 months, the question is only asking us to complete for 4. I'm going to let you guys pause the video so you can do your setup on your production budget like is on the screen now, and then we're going to delve straight into this. Okay, so the first thing you do here is you set up the months for July, August, September, October, November. Even though we're only asked to do it for October, we need some of November's numbers, so therefore we're going to do it for the first 5 months here. These sales are directly from the question. It tells you that these are the expected sales of units. However, how many units do we need to produce is what the production budget will ask. And of course, we may need to produce a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on our stock levels to satisfy these sales. So the opening stock is going to be 0 because this is a new build or a new company setup for us. And then the closing stock, well, we need to read paragraph 2 here quite carefully. It says stocks of finished goods are to be maintained at 60% of the following month's sales requirements. So that means that this number here is going to be 60% of this number here, August sales. So it is 60% of the following month's sales requirements. So 60% of 9,750 on your calculators will be 5,850. And then you bring that 5,850 up because we know from a quite familiar pattern here that whatever is the closing stock of 1 month will become the opening stock of the next month. So that 5,850 goes up there. Then how do we get the closing stock for August? That will be 60% of September's sales, the following month's sales, which is going to be 6,600. Then we go up to here and we put 6,600 in as your opening stock there. And then we're going to do our closing stock for September, which is going to be 60% of 12,000, 7,200. Bring that 7,200 up here. And then once more, you say how much is your October closing stock. Well, your October closing stock is 60% of November sales, which is going to be 7,500. And then you bring that 7,500 up here. And finally, and the reason we do this is because we need it in part B, November, to finish out November, that is going to be 60% of December sales, which are 12,800 from the question, and that 12,800, 60% of that is 7,680. Okay, so you can almost pretend up here like that 12,600 is 12,800 sitting there for December, but of course we don't really need it as such, we just need to use the number. So that gives us our units that we need to produce for each of those months. Now, the yellow here is an important number. That is your closing stock at the end of October. which in fact is the end of our production budget. We were only really asked for this section here. So therefore our closing stock is 7,500 units of finished goods at the end of October. And we'll come back to that yellow number when we're doing part D. Now we do our material purchases budget, and the first thing you will notice here is that we transfer down the answer from part A, and you transfer it down here. You begin part B with that. So these are the units that we need to produce. And the purpose of part B is to calculate how much raw materials we are going to require to produce these units. So we know from paragraph number 1 that each unit product requires 3 kilos of the material. It's called material X. 3 kilos to make it. So therefore it's easy for us to just put across 3 kilos in each of those situations and multiply it out, and that will give us the same production but in kilos of X material. But again, just like before, we may need to buy more or less of that because we might have opening or closing stocks. Of course, our opening stock is going to be 0 because it's a new setup of a company. And then we read paragraph 3, where it says the stocks of raw materials sufficient for 20% of the following month's requirements in kilos are held at the end of each month. So here, this is 20% of the required kilos for the following month, which is 31,500. So it's going to be 20% of August's requirements. The rest of it they will buy during the month of August as they work their way through the month, but they need to have a closing stock in July to satisfy 20%. And that 20% of 31,500 is 6,300. And then that gives them 6,300 to begin the month of August with. And then the closing stock in the month of August is 20% of September's production, which is 34,800. So that's 6,960. You bring that 6,960 up to begin the month of September, and then you have 20% of October's is 7,380. You bring that 7,380 up. And then you have now, here is where we use November's numbers to finish this thing out. 20% of 38,040 is 7,608. And that is the closing stock of raw materials for October. And again, if we look at this, this is our 4-month period that we're actually concerned with. We're just using November to be able to achieve that. So that's the closing stock figure for part D as well. Now, each kilo, to finish this out finally, each kilo it says costs €4. So therefore, if you put €4 down here, €4, €4, and €4, then that will give you your cost of raw materials for each month. And this green number over here is the total cost of raw materials. And that total cost of raw materials purchased will again be very relevant to us when we get to part D of the question. So some of the things I've got highlighted here, we'll have a better look at when we get to part D. That is part A and B completed, and I'm going to stop the video at that, and we're going to resume with part 2, looking at part C and D, which are cash budgeting, immediately after.